Welcome back to Podcast Principles. Today on episode 8, we're talking about how to create effective media through repurposing your podcast. In the past, podcasting was a misunderstood form of media. These long-form shows only lived on RSS feeds and Apple Podcasts. Podcasts now are dynamic, fun, and informative, and more people are consuming them on a weekly basis than they're consuming Netflix. There are hundreds of topics and hundreds of categories to choose from, with everything from education to entertainment. With more eyes and ears on podcasting these days, naturally comes more competition. So how does your show stand out? You shouldn't hope that people find your show. You should make it impossible for them not to. That means engaging in different ways on different platforms consistently. And you can do that by repurposing. A modern podcast needs more supporting elements just to make it relevant. If you want people to listen all the time, then you'll need to promote it all the time, but this doesn't have to be an overwhelming process. We define repurposing as reusing and reformatting an original piece of content, like a podcast, to create a new piece of content. And it's really that simple. A prime example of repurposing is the Joe Rogan Experience and JRE Clips. This is a separate YouTube channel that they made just to post clips of the longer form 2-hour episodes. It's extremely common for comedy and entertainment podcasts to have separate social media channels just for their repurposed content. From this style of repurposing, you get people who are fans just of the clips, you get listeners who are tuning in on the audio platforms, and then you get people who watch the clips and convert to listeners. This is the holy grail of repurposing, the trifecta. As a podcaster, repurposing saves you time, money, and resources. Why would you create one video at a time when you can just repurpose content from a longer video that you already spent time and energy on? If you're not repurposing, you're wasting time and you're leaving content on the table. And with a show or a podcast of any size, that means leaving money on the table too. So let's jump into the different styles of repurposing. The first one we're going to cover is the most common: video. Video is essential. It gives you the chance to attract an entirely new audience while stimulating your current audience and delivering content to them every single day. If you can't do video or you don't have a camera or a webcam, you can actually head over to Podcast Principles episode 6, where we give all of our recommendations for equipment at any price level. When it comes to video for your podcast, you're not going to need high-end video equipment, but HD quality is a must, and there's really no reason to do video if you can't. So the most common and the most effective form of repurposing video content is in the form of clips. Here, you identify a key moment in the episode or a story and condense it to the length of about a minute. It's important to remember that clips are just that. They're clips. You have to keep the audience's attention in mind and be careful not to cut too much. You only have a minute here, so setting context is extremely important. Think of it like a highlight reel. You're trying to convince somebody to listen who hasn't dedicated the time to listen to a full episode yet. So this clip is an advertisement for your podcast. You have to keep it enticing, engaging, and entertaining. Here's an example from my podcast that got me another 10,000 views on my podcast page. Here's the original moment.
That's what I'm focusing on.
You know what's crazy? It really comes down to the mind, right? Because they'll have these. There's cool, interesting studies on smokers, right? They don't get dementia. They got nicotine going. Nicotine's a nootropic. You know what I'm saying? So it's all mental. It's all like that. That's
it's getting your heart rate going and shit.
Yeah, well, that too. So it's
and here's the clipped moment.
Supposedly, sleep is more important than working out and eating healthy, like combined.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It really comes down to the mind, right? There's interesting studies on smokers, right? They don't get dementia. They got nicotine going. Nicotine's nootropic. You know what I'm saying? So it's all mental. And the number one determinants for longevity are grip strength and walking speed. Okay, so if you gotta optimize for those, and sleep, obviously. I think that's a lot of where dementia and mental issues in old age comes from, is lack of sleep over a prolonged period of time.
I bet a lot of people aren't sleeping properly.
I think most people in general, dude, my girlfriend, for instance, she has trouble. She has a lot of trouble sleeping, falling asleep, and staying asleep. All types of sleep is hard for her.
That's why I like the Aura Ring,
How long have you been
like
using
a
this
week?
thing? Really?
Yeah.
That's
I flex
awesome.
it everywhere. I'm like, yo, look at my ring.
That's dope. Trett's got the Whoop. Hey,
Yeah.
you know about the Whoop?
Yeah, I use the Whoop. It's like a.
Can you see the difference between the original and the clip? Repurposing isn't free. Obviously, it took me a good amount of time, about 40 minutes, to create that clip, but it's not like you have to spend 9 hours editing a 1-minute clip from your show. We repurpose clips from this podcast and post them on TikTok without much editing, and they get hundreds or thousands of views. All popular social media platforms these days either accept or rely solely on videos like this. If you're not the type of person to be active on all of your platforms all of the time, this is a great way to put your posting on autopilot. Using video also gives you unique access to visually based platforms like Instagram and TikTok. You don't need to create anything new. Just pull a moment from your longer form podcast, add a title and some subtitles so people can listen if they don't have the sound on, and you're basically done. We explain the how, but why is this important? It's because being on these other platforms gives you more reach and the ability to stimulate your current audience while reaching a new audience. Don't let your content go unnoticed. Just because there's a new episode every week doesn't mean you can't promote an episode from a month ago. Repurposing gives you the ability to do that quickly and easily. Especially with content that is evergreen and not time sensitive, this gives that content the ability to stay alive well after the release date. It's also entirely possible to convert topics that were covered on your show into text-based posts. And these small bits are perfect for platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn that rely mostly on text-based content. You can use services like rev.com or even meeting notes transcription services like Sonero to inexpensively transcribe your podcast. Now you have a text database of topics and conversations to pull from. This also gives you the opportunity to highlight particular pieces of content that you find important. Sometimes a podcast episode is just too long for a portion of your audience to consume. This is a great way to give them the Cliff Notes. Two common forms of text repurposing are blog writing and newsletters. These are a great way to drive traffic to your website and to your podcast. Finally, you can optimize your transcript for SEO to drive more people to your site. Repurposing is a spectrum. You can pull a sentence for a Twitter post or write an entire article. Either way, it's going to help you. No matter how you repurpose your content, it's essential that you understand the benefits. The majority of content gets forgotten almost immediately after it's posted, and repurposing gives you the ability to revive topics that would have been otherwise overlooked. A properly planned hour-long interview can yield a dozen short-form clips and more than a few medium-form clips and blog posts. You might as well get all the bang for your buck and not leave content on the table or on your hard drive. Don't be intimidated. Start simple, start small, with a short video clip or a text post curated from your podcast. Before you know it, you'll have a system and an archive of clips, topics, and blog posts that will fuel your marketing and keep your audience waiting for the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Podcast Principles, Episode 8, How to Create Effective Media by Repurposing Your Podcast. As always, you can find us on all podcast platforms. You can watch the video version on YouTube, where you can also subscribe to catch our bi-weekly episodes. Make sure to follow us and leave us a rating on Spotify, as well as leaving us an honest review and rating on Apple Podcasts. Also, make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn. at Ryan R. Sullivan, and all of the links for everything I mentioned will be in the description below. Once again, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Podcast Principles, and we will see you on episode 9 in 2 weeks. We'll catch you on the next one.